All right, so the title of my presentation today is called Why Not Me? And the reason why I put this is because I sat here in this room. I actually took a political science class in this room. It was my second time taking the class because I failed out of it my freshman year. So like some of you, you come back from your mission, you've changed a little bit, you've altered your vision or your path, and you decide, gee, I ought to get my GPA up so I can actually do something. So I ended up getting a D in it my freshman year, but I sat in the same classroom afterwards, corrected that to an A, and wiped that out. So good thing at BYU there is repentance, and you can clean that up and get it off the record. So I'm excited to be back here today, and especially to be with you. Now I recognize that like you, I've been through a lot of classes. I have a lot on my plate. You have a lot of different activities that you're involved with. Some of them are part of your eternal plan, some of them are not. But my hope today is that you'll shoot out some questions if you have them. I hope that you will be engaged in the conversation, so this isn't just a lecture. I hope that I can reach out to each one of you and kind of go through this as I go through this lecture. So let me tell you a little bit about Namify and kind of how we began. So in 2001, Namify was born here in Provo. I had finished my political science degree in 2000, and I was headed off to law school in summer of 2000, but something just didn't feel right, right? So this is the first time that I had felt a certain prompting that said, like, don't go to law school, which to my parents' disappointment, I mean, we had the whole family dinner where they did an intervention with me, and they reminded me, like, listen, if you don't be an attorney, then we failed as parents, and we have failed you as a family. So they were quite embarrassed when I decided not to go to law school, and I said, well, just give me a year, and I'll figure out kind of what I want to do. So ultimately, that led me to founding the company, what is known today as Namify. In 2002, we basically started with name tags, lanyards, a couple of other branded items, and essentially we were a promotional company, like just your standard engraving and printing company. Nothing fancy, nothing great at that point. By 2006, we were doing about $10 million a year in revenue, and I had 60 employees. And it was at that point where I thought, boy, maybe we're actually going somewhere with the company. It's actually doing something. Skip ahead another 5 years, and in 2013, we now have 1,000 employees worldwide. We have 150 here in Springville, Utah as our headquarters. And we have offices in Portland, Denver. I was just in China this last weekend, and I'll be out at our Ningbo office next week. And we have offices in Frankfurt, Guangzhou, and Fuzhou as well, because we do a lot of brand manufacturing. What questions do you have so far on that? That's all I really like to talk about with me. Let me talk about what Namify does now, at least in a nutshell. So Namify is sort of the epitome of a branding organization. We are the one-stop shop for any Fortune 500 company or any small business, any startup company. Anytime they need any type of branding services, we take care of it. So branding essentially is the identity you give your company as you get started. It's the visual and emotional appeal of your goods and services to potential customers. So it's known as taglines, logos, colors, commercials, websites. So Namify takes care of all this for companies. I'll give you some examples of great brands. These are obvious, but I want to make sure you know where I'm coming from. So you've got Nike, Apple, Coca-Cola. These are some of the top brands that are out there. One of the things that's nice about living in Portland now is I get to be around Nike a little bit more and get to kind of understand their brand and what they're doing as we work closer with Nike and some of these larger organizations. Why is branding important? Well, quite simply, the stronger your brand is, the more customers will see it as the best solution for your problems, whatever problem you're running into. So most people, before they choose a company, they will figure out what their problem is, and then they have an emotional tie to the brand to fix the problem. That's why once people get that brand or they feel a loyalty to that brand, they start to feel animosity to the competitors to those brands. I can give you a couple examples. Apple versus Samsung, possibly. BYU versus, oh, a few of you actually said it. Yeah, Utah, good. I didn't know if we could utter those words here. So you start to feel, once you establish some loyalty to a brand, then you start to feel to protect that brand, and you want to protect it. So one of the things that we help companies do is confirm that customer loyalty. We help them stand out from other companies. We help them unify all of their content across the board, confirm their credibility, and then also show the emotional benefits of their products. So Namify develops and manages the brand from all stages. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about Namify? I love the company, but I want to get into the meat and get into some really fun stuff. So any questions about Namify? Good. You're easy. Awesome. Moving on. Let me talk about the impressions that you make on people. And then I'll kind of transition into, when I talk about impressions, then we'll kind of transition into certain principles and some of the challenges that it takes to build your own business. And then hopefully we'll end on a good Q&A discussion in here. So let me give you one example of a case study that we helped put together. And this is a case study done by some of our people in dealing with Target stores. So Target is one of those companies that doesn't really need to advertise that often. One of the things that Target decided to do was to put a button with their logo on all of their employees. And the thought process behind it was, if we have 1,778 stores worldwide, and we have 365,000 employees, and we have 2.5 million shoppers every day, and every day people are coming into the store, then the average customer is looking at 2 or 3 employees, Target employees each time, which means they're getting up to 7.5 million impressions into the customer's eyes every single day. What that means is they're making 3 billion impressions per year. So Target actually has a very good brand loyalty. It's basically everybody that doesn't want to shop at Walmart heads over to Target. And it seems to be just a higher end market for people. And they start to develop that loyalty. And part of that is because simply they get 3 billion impressions. Well, to get 3 billion impressions, they would have to have 100 million 30-second TV spots to reach that same target audience. So one of the things that we know about this is that a lot of the different brands that are out there, you don't realize that you're seeing them, but each time you see a brand, each time you have an impression or you see that impression of that particular brand, it logs a seed inside of you somewhere. And that's either going to be a good one or it's going to be a bad one. And so the importance is that's why people put their brand on everything they can put it on. I'm looking at all the Macs in here right now. How do I know that some people are using Macs? Because you can actually see, did I lose it? You can actually see the Apple logo, correct? Lit up. I can also see some of you have some Samsung laptops, but then I also see that there are a number of laptops that actually don't have anything on them. We're going to pause for a technical difficulty break. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. It's a little big, but we'll. Good. All right. So let me talk a little bit about some of the principles that we had that help to build Namify, or that we still believe in today to building any business. So I want to go through some of these principles. Some of these will be common to you. These will just be repeated back. But I want to talk about some of the key differences that helped Namify to grow the way it did, to get the 3-digit and 4-digit percentage growth. Once I talk about the principles, I'll talk about some of the challenges I faced, and then I'd like to tie it back into each one of you and talk about your businesses, the things that you guys are actually working on right now. At the end of the class, I think you got a ticket and you got a lanyard. At the end of the class, we've got some giveaways, because naturally we're a branding company and a promotional company, so we want to give away some of the products. So we have 5 principles that we implement at Namify, and I'll go through these with you. Number 1, we believe, as cheesy as it sounds, we believe in Bionic leadership. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the term Bionic, it's an acronym for Believe It or Not, I Care. We believe, first and foremost, that our people are our greatest asset. In other words, if we don't take care of our people, they aren't going to take care of the company. So we put our people first, and what that means is we have a lot of well-paid individuals. We hire people that are We're having difficulties, huh? Just hit allow. And then I'll go. It's because somebody's developed technology to control this, right? So we have, we put our people at the forefront. We make sure that the people know that they are number one, that they are the reason that we even exist as an organization, as a company. And that's not just a cheesy line. We actually implement this and make sure that people are taken care of. The second one, we believe in full accountability. At the company, we make sure that everybody's accountable, make sure everybody puts, is putting forth their effort, and we weed out all the people that don't want to be accountable. The third one is transparency. We're a very transparent organization. Everybody in our company knows how much everybody else makes in the company. They have access to that information. We keep it very transparent. Everybody also knows in the company what it takes to get to the next level. Now, one of the things that's unique, back to our Bionic leadership, is at Namify, half of our people that have careers there do not have degrees because they possess a certain skill set that we like, which is a good attitude, among other things. But then the other half do have degrees. And so we keep an environment where we have a culture where it's really just based on accountability, and it's not necessarily based on education. It's more about attitude. So one of the things that I'll hear our CEO say quite often is that he says the thing he loves about Namify is that he knows exactly where he stands because everything's transparent. And it's also the thing that he absolutely hates about Namify, is because he knows exactly where he stands. In other words, the numbers determine where he's at, and the numbers determine where everybody's at. I'm not winning here. What do you want to do? Should we just, maybe we can, oh, like we're getting a timeout on other windows? Hit that present button at the top left. Good enough. Okay. Awesome. Okay, our fourth principle that we implement is being unified. Now, naturally, part of branding is unifying cultures and unifying individuals. And so we want to make sure that we are unified through relationship building, trust experiences, and spending time with one another. And then the fifth one is we're very precise as a company. Because we are dealing with, in any given day, we're dealing with 100,000 to 150,000 customized pieces, every detail is important. And each individual order may have 40 or 50 or 60 different variables. So we have to be very, very precise. So these are the 5 principles that have helped Namify get to the point that they've gotten to. So we weren't always there. And so now I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'll shift away from Namify. Part of the lecture series is they want to know what the company is and tell us a little bit about yourself so that it ties in. But let me talk to you about some very personal experiences. And now I'd like to really turn it over to you. And if you have some things that you want to discuss, I'm open. I know we have a Q&A at the end, but if there's anything that comes to your mind or any impression that comes to your mind, you want to raise your hand and talk about it, we'll be happy to talk about it.
You mentioned that you hire people because they have good attitude.
Yes.
So how do you determine if someone has a good attitude in the hiring process?
Well, I think it's similar to when you date somebody. Like, how do you determine if you like them or not? So one of the things that I've learned is you can take somebody that has great technical skills, and you can, if they don't have a great attitude, it's almost impossible to teach them. And even though they may have great technical skills, they have to have a certain attitude. So the attitude that we look for is basically a can-do attitude. One of the ways we do that is the way we fly our positions. We don't fly our positions in a traditional sense. And I'll give you an example. We're hiring graphic designers right now. Well, we don't just say, here are your qualifications, here's what you have to have. It's a little more detailed than that. Like, you have to own 3 different colors of pairs of pants. You have to like this kind of music, or you have to not like this kind of music, or you have to have seen this movie, or this has to be your favorite quote. And it's a little more fun so that the person that sees it, if they're offended by it or they don't like it, it's not a traditional professional resume builder, then we don't want them. Like, if they move past it. But every once in a while it just catches that somebody's eye that says, well, this seems like a quirky, kind of fun company. Let me give it a try. So we're looking for people that want to try new things because every day is different at Namify. In our organization. Every day we have new products, new clients, new processes that have to be taken care of because we're bidding and we're building different brands, and so every day is completely different. If it's not a cookie cutter company, we need people that can change on the fly, people that can be adaptable, people that can be flexible. Does that answer the question? Okay, good. So let me talk about number one. When I first started out in business, I never thought I'd be a business guy. So Scott gave me a really nice introduction here today, but I'm not a business guy. I'm the farthest guy removed from risk if you were to sit down and talk to me. For me, it's just a mathematical formula. It's not really a risk. But as I look back on it, people say, well, yeah, you took all these risks. So to me, there are two things. One is you have to have the due diligence, and then two, you have to feel good about it or be prayerful about it and move ahead on it. And once you move ahead on it, then everything will work. So to me, it's really simple. You do your research and then you have faith. But these are a series of things that went through my mind that as I talk to most of you, they also go through your mind. So let me ask by show of hands, how many of you have a great idea for a business? Okay, that's not too bad. How many of you have a decent idea for a business? Okay, how many of you would really love to do a business, but you have no idea what to do quite yet? Okay, that's also very common. But we share something in our minds, and that is you represent the 1% of campus that is even interested in taking this lecture series to know and to learn, like, what does it take to be an entrepreneur? Or how can I step out and use some of my creative ability to actually build something? So already I'm going to talk to the group here because if we were sitting in a humanities class or an art class or a history class or a language class somewhere else, I wouldn't share these same things. But because you want to be entrepreneurs at some point or you want to create something or be involved, perhaps you've gone through some of these things. So these are some of the personal things that went through my mind or things that I hear quite often when I ask people, so why don't you move forward? And the title of my presentation was, Why Not Me? In other words, why not me? And that's what I realized. I went through that process where I'm thinking, well, why couldn't I do this? If everybody else is doing it, there must be some secret or there must be something that I can figure out as well. So starting your own business, you have a lot of sacrifices and there are a lot of trade-offs. A lot of people say, well, is it hard work? Well, sure, it may be hard work, but to me it's just a trade-off. You're trading off all of your short-term to stick to your long-term goals. Now, we as Latter-day Saints understand that. In fact, that's the whole purpose of our existence here. We're supposed to give up all of the short-term temptations in this life in hopes that, you know, in 80 or 90 years, we reach a long-term goal, which is our ultimate eternal goal. So starting a business, you're creating a similar system, and you're just giving up certain things to have other things long-term. Starting a business, it's exhausting, mentally, physically, emotionally. It's also very rewarding at times. So these are the things that I hear quite often. I have a plan, I just have no money. I hear things like, I'm not connected to anyone. That's my favorite one that I hear because I don't know anyone. You know, half of you in here have family history and your aunts, uncles, brothers, cousins, whatever. Somebody's a general authority or somebody started a Fortune 500 company. And I was connected to no one when I started. And that was a fear of mine because I thought, boy, if I fail on this, who's going to bail me out? I didn't have the rich uncle. I didn't have the rich mission president. I didn't have somebody that was my mentor at the time. I'm not a risk taker. Or you may say, I take risks, but I just don't have a good idea. Like I don't have something that I can actually put in place. My favorite one is, well, I could do it. Like, Brian, I could do what you're doing. I have a brother-in-law that's the epitome of this. He says, well, I could do what you're doing, but I just choose not to, right? Other people say entrepreneurs are too flashy. Some people say, I don't know who to trust, where to go. Others say, I cannot believe that anyone would trust someone like me if I get started. In other words, I'm either not a good leader, there's something about me. I don't have all the answers. So what if I start and my employees ask me questions? I have no idea what I'm doing. Like I don't have the answers to this magic right here. I'll just keep hitting the present button over and over. You're good. Government won't help. Bank won't lend me money. I have to find the person who will mentor me. I just need a solid plan. I'm really not a leader. I really just want validation. And my favorite one is my family would be upset if I left my current path. Go ahead.
Adding to that last part, how do you know when to
Sure.
invest into that. I'm a mechanical engineer, so it's a lot of work. And I have an idea that I kind of step away from school for a second and focus on it. How do you know when it's the right time to do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. He's asking, when do you know when the right time is? I used to tell people when the exact right time was, but then I got myself in trouble because I would say it's the right time if you do the following steps. And if they did the following steps, it would be the right time. But some people would step away and start the plan, but then they would get a little bit distracted. And I'm actually going to talk about that in a few more minutes. So let me talk about some of these are basically, I call them the excuses of why people don't actually want to continue forward. You call them excuses, you call them challenges. I gave a lecture here about 18 months ago talking about the 4 obstacles to success, and one of those was the justifications, or basically fear, and that's ultimately what keeps people from doing things. People that tell me all the time that, well, the reason why I don't do things, Brian, is because I don't have the money for it, I actually want to call their bluff. And let me go through some of these things. When you step out and you start your own business, one of the biggest failures that people make is they don't check themselves against anyone. They all of a sudden take off and they start the business and they say, great, I've started the business, I'm ready to go. And you know who your biggest fans are? They're your family, right? You go home to your spouse, or you go home to your parents, or you go home to your friends, and you say, check this out, I've got this really cool idea. And what do they say? Hey man, that's really cool, I really like that idea. You're great, you're so smart, you're such a good entrepreneur. And what happens? You start building yourself up more and more and more, but you're not checking yourself against anything. I'm the guy that comes along and says like, wait a minute, as an entrepreneur, if you're really that good, where's your data? Where are your numbers? Where's your revenue? How come you're not making money? Where's your product? So most people don't like talking to me because they call me the dream crusher, because I sit down with them and I say, hey, that's great that for the last 5 years you've had this business idea, but I'm going to ask you some really hard questions. In 2012, 1,500 startups were funded by VCs, meaning that the VCs just took a startup from scratch. 50,000 of them were funded by angel investors. VCs fund about 1 in 400. Angels fund 1 in 40. These are round numbers for this class. Millions of great ideas are out there. 514,000 startups per month on average last year. So 6 million businesses went into startup mode last year. Right? So what happens? Only 8% of them were funded. Of those that were funded, still half of them failed. But what does that mean? That means that 4% of the ideas were actually really good ideas. The rest of the people that did the startup based on a friend said something, or hey, you really ought to do this. And we hear that quite often. Think about your dinner table conversations. Everyone you know has a great idea. You're sitting there around the dinner table, you're talking about it, and mom, dad, aunt, uncle, somebody says something like, oh, I think that would be a really cool idea. You know, if I could make this, then I would do this and this and this. Everybody has an idea. But getting into business is 99% perspiration, and it's really only 1% inspiration, because everybody's got the idea, but only a very few of us have the perspiration or the work to actually, the work ethic to put it into to make it great, to put it into practice. So what do? You check yourself a little bit. You ask professionals. You check yourselves against them. You'll know when the right time is to jump ship. And when I say jump ship, if you want to see it like that, and most people do, I look at it like you're going to pause your current pathway and you're going to deviate a little bit and see if you start a new pathway. I don't see it as the end of the world. My parents did at the time. They saw it as like, this is the end of the world. He's going to be a failure. Like, how do we disown our son but still love him? Because, you know, whatever. Anyway, but what happens is you are the ones that keep yourselves from succeeding. And that's what I had to admit. I had to admit that it was my own fear. It wasn't money. It wasn't the fact that I had pressures everywhere else. It was my own fear at the end. So you are the answer and you are the solution. So you got to be careful when you jump into business. You have to know if you have a false sense of confidence or a true sense of confidence. And that's what I love about the Entrepreneurship Center here on campus, because you can go in and you can check yourself with mentors. And people that don't, you know, you'll get 1 in 1,000 that succeed. And they have a really great idea, and the idea kind of sells itself. But a lot of people out there aren't checking themselves, so they go and spend a lot of time, they spend a lot of somebody else's money, they fail, and then you hear why 95% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. But you've got to have measurable results when you check yourself. You must know when and what to check yourself against. Sometimes you have a government restriction, sometimes banks, they help check you and put things in place. But I tell people, stop going to friends, because they're your friends for a reason, right? They're going to tell you some of the things that you want to hear. When we succeed, it's only because we ask ourselves the tough questions, which is, how do I make it to get this point? How do I do this? Not what are all the excuses why, but start asking yourself some of the hard questions. Let me run you through a little scenario, because we're about out of time here, and I want to get these prizes out. But I'll run through a couple things. And this is going to take some help on your part. All right. How many of you want to own a house one day? That's pretty good. A lot of the group wants to own a house. Okay? Tell me why you want to own a house. Thanks. Go ahead, just yell it out. What is it? Big kitchen? Okay, so you get a kitchen? Good. What is it?
No rent.
No rent?
Don't want to throw money away.
Don't want to throw money away? These are good. I wish we could write some of these down. So, what does it take to buy a house? How many of you have $250,000 cash? No, don't answer that. How many of you have $250,000 cash or $500,000 cash to go buy a house right now? Not really. So what's the process of buying a home? What do you do? So you finance the home. Okay, how much do you finance? All of it, usually, right? Let's say so you finance 97% of it. So let's take a $200,000 home, and you're going to borrow $195,000 against it. Okay, does it make sense? Okay, now you're sitting around the dinner table. What do your parents think about that? What's he say? It's fine. Why is it fine? Because everyone does it. Good. And so what's happening in our society? Everybody buys a house, so it's great. But I want you to take a step back for a minute. So you're going to take and make a decision. You're going to buy a $200,000 chunk of something, rock, sticks. And everybody says, well, no, Brian, it's a home. Like it's where you gather your family together. No, I get that. But home is where the heart is. Like you don't necessarily have to have a $200,000 home or a $500,000 home. So why do we end up doing it? Well, there are a lot of societal norms out there that say it's okay. So you have these housing tracts and housing developments that say, well, if you get into a house, you can actually make money in a house. Okay, for those that are in investment banking or finance, what's the return on houses right now? Let's throw out a number.
Slightly positive nowadays.
Slightly positive, yeah. But you get a house and you get 6%, 7% return, right? Let's just throw that out there. What's an average profit margin in a business? Well, give me a good one. I don't know many people that are running a business right now at 6 or 7% margin. That's not fun unless you got a ton of volume and you got a ton of shareholders and you're a huge company. A lot of people are 30%. I mean, you're 20, 30, 40, 50%. You get into SaaS companies, you're pushing 70%, 80% on these gross margins out there. All right. So if you're willing to go over here and borrow $195,000 to be able to have a place to eat, right? And then what do you get out of the house? I'm talking just financially. What do you get out of the house? You get a 6 or 7% return, you hope, unless there's a dip in the market. Well, so why won't you go and borrow $10,000 to start a business? What keeps you from doing that? What is it? It's non-traditional, right? So we can go through the same format. We can go through the same flow. What does your family think of it? What do your friends say when you say, hey, I'm going to leave my engineering program for a semester or two. I'm going to try my hand at business. What do they say? Don't do it, right? It's unsafe, right? So the question is, what keeps you from taking it to the next level and starting the business? Let me end on this. I'll talk about discipline. Remember, I talked about this earlier. Discipline is choosing between what you want now and what you want most. I really like that statement. So here's what I tell people. If you think you're ready to start your business, then sit down and develop a plan. You've got the BYU Entrepreneurship program here. You've got the Rollins Center. They can help you go through the steps of the plans. Most people, when they do a business model will have 400 steps to it. Most people do step 1, step 12, and step 400, which is, let me get an idea, let me get a name, and now it's time to launch. And that's how most people will start a business, in essence. They don't really think through all of the processes and the details. But think for a moment, if you think about the book of Abraham, and I can share that here because we're at BYU, but you think about the book of Abraham where everything was created spiritually before it was created temporally. It's the same process. We have a pattern in place. So you develop a plan. In other words, you counsel together and you put the plan in place. So you sit down, you develop everything spiritually, you put all the hypotheticals in the plan, you figure everything out. Then you revisit the plan often. If you're thinking about making a change or you're thinking about starting the business, put your plan in place and imagine, what if I had the business today? And if I had to do the business today, would I still do the things that I'm doing? Would I still go out tonight? Would I still do X, Y, and Z? Would I still hang out with my friends? What would I do differently week after week? But you revisit the plan often. The third one, exercise your agency to build it and subscribe to it. This one is key. If you don't like your business plan, if you don't like your business model, then you got to ask yourself, well, why am I doing it? Are you doing the business because of validation? Are you doing it because somebody said you should? Are you doing it because somebody said you'd be good at it? Part of doing business is a lot of fun. Like, I have so much fun and freedom and flexibility. Scott jokes that I look at a dashboard all day. Well, it's kind of true. I look at my noon reports and my 6 p.m. reports every day for 15 companies all across the board, and my assistant collects reports and sends me a report every Friday morning of where everybody's at and what's happening with all of the employees everywhere in the world. So yeah, that is fun. And the rest of the time, I have 6 kids and I spend a lot of time with them. But I exercised my agency and I decided that I liked the plan that I put in place. And then I decided to be obedient to it. So what are the things you run into? Yeah, I had to deal with the flack of my parents. My in-laws were worse. I'm glad they're recording this so I can send this to them. They basically said, like, we just wanted an attorney in the family. And my mother-in-law said something effective, well, sister so-and-so, her daughter married an attorney, and we wanted our daughter to marry an attorney. Anyway, I give her a hard time about it a little bit. But be obedient to the plan and follow the plan. I had a gal that when we were first married, we moved into our new ward, and a gal came up to my wife and me and said, hey, can you guys hang out with us? It's Labor Day tomorrow. You guys want to hang out? We're going to play games. And I said, oh, no, thanks, I'm working. And she said, well, wait a minute, why are you working? She said, don't you own the company? And I said, well, yeah, I own the company, but like, I'm making a choice, like either play games with people in the ward or go in and work. And I chose to be obedient to the plan because I had my goals, I had my metrics. I wasn't a social hermit necessarily. When I was behind, I got caught up. I stayed through the night, I did everything that I needed to do, and I was disciplined to it. And then you recognize that any deviation to your actual plan is going to have consequences. Whether they be short-term or long-term, whether it be positive or negative, there are going to be consequences. Last time I was here, I talked a lot about following those impressions that you have. I don't have enough time to get into it in detail because we're at the end of our time slot. But in each one of these decisions, the reason why these are individual decisions is you've got to be prayerful. There's an exercise of faith every time you jump out and do something different. You look at the scriptures, you've got hundreds of examples of people that went against societal norms. That's going to happen. And you know what's funny about it? People harassed me for about 4 years. And then 4 years later, what do? They start to respect a little bit. They start to wonder, well, how can I do that? Like, what can I change in my life? Like, how come I'm not doing this, that, and the other? But ultimately, these are very personal decisions for you to be able to step up and move to the next level. So be prayerful, seek guidance. As you're faithful in this, you'll be able to achieve anything you want to achieve. I'll give you my information for the question and answer. I'm a very transparent person. I'll answer any question that you want, even the questions that you don't feel are appropriate. I don't mind because I've been there. I've been in your shoes. I know what it's like. I know what you're going through, some of the difficulties that you're running into, and some of the struggles that you have with your business plans.